This is the BMW 218i M Sport Gran Coupé. Now, just to preface this review, I was supposed to have the M235i this week, but unfortunately Mother Nature had her way with it and sent it to the panel beaters. So I've got this instead, which has all the creature comforts of the 235, but none of the performance. It's about half as powerful. It's zippy. I hate that word. But it's still really good and worth a look. This car doesn't have the same ridiculously oversized grille that you find in some of the more recent BMWs, but it has maybe had just a little bit of Botox. I really like the LED driving lights. They kind of remind me of the same ones you find in the VW Golf. This car, interestingly, doesn't actually share any of the same body panels as the 2 Series two-door coupe. It's actually based on the 1 Series platform. The rear end is probably not one of the better ones that BMW has come up with lately. I just think these lights are a little bit too skinny and, I don't know, the sheet metal just looks a little bit swollen to me. Inside the boot there's 390 litres of space, which you can increase by lowering the floor, and the split seats fold back in a 40-20-40 configuration. Inside, and I really like this interior dash design. Everything is so well put together and so solid. Nothing wriggles or makes any noise or rattles. It just feels like it's made out of rock. There is something about German design that just beats everyone else, with BMW and Audi both turning out beautiful cockpits. This one is chock full of buttons, which I really like. The 10.25-inch center console screen is stunning. The graphics are razor sharp. The menus are so easy to use. And it's so well designed that even though it has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, I find myself just wanting to use the native system just because it looks so good. But just on the number of buttons, there are probably more in here than there technically need to be, because rather than just having one drive mode selector button where you would, scroll through the different drive modes, here there is one button for each mode: Sport, Comfort and Eco. The view from the reversing camera on the center console screen is really sharp. It looks like a 4K camera, but it seems to be the only camera in the whole car. So there's no top-down parking view and no forward camera to help you maneuver into tight parking spaces, which I think is a bit of an omission. Moving down the dash from the center console screen, we've got very simple to use air conditioning and climate controls, only single zone climate control in this car. Just beneath that are a row of numbered buttons 1 to 8, and these are actually radio station presets, which again is something that's kind of old school, and you probably don't need a button for each one, but they're here and they look pretty cool. The sound system doesn't have any fancy brand names attached to it, and it's only got 6 speakers, but it makes such a huge noise, you don't actually really need any more. Moving down to the lower console here, again, there are loads more buttons and the gear shifter, which has a great feel to it. The large rotary dial here and the buttons around it are actually shortcuts for the navigation system and the center console screen, which I can honestly say I have not touched, because you can do it all with the touch screen and it just feels a lot more intuitive that way. The digital instrument cluster in front of me is beautifully designed with super sharp graphics, heaps of information, and there's a degree of customization available, perhaps not quite as much as you'd see in an Audi, but all of the preset modes kind of look more or less the same. The colors change depending on which drive mode you're in. Red, of course, for sport mode. The head-up display in front of me, again, also very sharp and clear. It gives me local speed zone information as well as my current speed, and will also give navigation directions as well, which is great because you don't have to take your eyes off the road. The one thing I have noticed with it though, and I don't have them on today because the weather's a bit crap, is that you can't see it when you're wearing polarized sunglasses unless you tilt your head to the side, which is a bit strange to be driving around looking like that. Now let's talk about the steering wheel. I've got to be honest, it's the one thing I don't love. There's nothing actually wrong with the steering. It feels really good and direct, and this car just loves to fly around corners, but the wheel itself, it just feels a fraction too big and a little too thick and heavy in the hand. I want something that I can kind of throw around a little bit more. This just feels almost a little bit truck-like. The seats up front are magnificent, with electric adjustment in just about every direction you can imagine. There's lumbar support, and you can even move the bolsters in on the side to keep you firmly hugged into the seat when going around corners. It's really comfortable. There is one thing I've noticed: when you're in comfort mode and the automatic stop-start is on, it just a bit of a shudder each time that the engine turns off and then turns back on. It's just not as smooth as it should be. So the traffic has come to a stop because one of those ridiculous stretched Hummer limousines can't make the corner up in front of us. I get it, you're going to an event and you want to make a huge impact by going in a stretched Hummer, but really? Oh, lost a little bit of traction just there. It is a wet day. Generally, you could drive around quite happily in sport mode all the time in this car and not feel like you're ever going to get out of control or into any sort of trouble. The only time I found myself actually turning that off was when I was on a rough patch of freeway and the suspension just felt a bit too firm. It was kind of jarring my back. So I switched it back into comfort, and that did seem to smooth it out just a little bit. But generally speaking, the suspension in this car is a bit firmer, but it is supposed to be a little bit sportier and a bit more fun. Another surprising omission in this car is active cruise control. So that means that when you're driving on the freeway with the cruise control on, the car will not adjust its speed to whatever the car in front of you is doing, which is kind of a little bit unusual when you're used to it. It's like driving a car in the old days. One thing this car does do really well is corner. It just loves twisty country roads and will fly around them with no loss of traction or body roll. It just feels so glued and well planted to the road. And the engine is nice and responsive and makes a nice noise as well. Even though you don't have that gut kick that you get in the M235, this is still really good. Let's see how he goes 0 to 100. I gotta be honest, it sounds better than it feels. The 0 to 100 time is officially 8.7 seconds, which is not really all that quick. Under the hood, there's a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine that outputs 103 kilowatts and 220 newton meters of torque. Not really earth-shattering numbers. It's about half as much as you find in the same-bodied M235i. But like I said, it's zippy. There's enough power to get up hills comfortably and overtake on the highway. No paddle shifters, unfortunately, which makes it a little harder to do those quick changes, but you can do them down here with the gear stick in the lower console. Starting at $47,990, the BMW 218i M Sport Gran Coupé is a fantastic daily driver. It will get you to and from work in comfort and style. It's just missing the blistering performance of the M235. So the redhead in me is saying, I'd really like to take the M235 for a spin when it comes back from the panel beaters. Please.